Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Fauzan Bentugiman, and today I will be presenting about my FYP2 that given title Static and Dynamic Analysis of Moisturized Glass Epoxy Composites. And my supervisor is Dr. Abdul Hakim bin Abdullah. Basically, this is a project about to know the strength of the epoxy composite when we submerge into distilled water. The content in this presentation that I will present to you guys is a quick and simple introduction about the project, problem statement and objective, literature review on the detail, the overall detail in this project, project methodology, result and discussion, and last but not least, conclusion and recommendation. For the first introduction, composite have been described as the most innovative material available in this century due to adaptability to various circumferences. Currently, fiber-reinforced composites are becoming more important as demand for lightweight material with high strength for specific application is growing increasingly on the market. Secondly, high specific stiffness and high specific strength make the composite a suitable alternative for this critical weight application. And the third one is composite will not be outstanding without a metric that play a critical role in fiber reinforcement composites such as epoxy. Epoxy resin are commonly used as adhesive in the automotive, aerospace, and industrial industry due to their excellent thermal and mechanical properties. Apart from this, the epoxy also protects the surface for the fiber from mechanical damage, serve as a shield against the adverse environment, and transfer the load to the fiber. For the opposite composite also have their own advantage and disadvantage. For the first advantage for the opposite composite is the product of the weight can be reduced. This is because the opposite composite is more lighter than other materials such as aluminum. The second one is a stronger structure. For example, fiber reinforced matrix system are stronger than traditional aluminum found on most industry, and they also provide a smooth surface for the product. The fourth one is the epoxy composite is do not corrode easily. For example, they don't corrode easily as the other type of structure. Epoxy composite also less in maintenance and repair costs, which means the epoxy composite do not take much maintenance rather than the material. And disadvantage for the epoxy composite is the epoxy composite do not break easily. That makes it hard to tell if the interior structure has been damaged at all of these costs. It is single most concerning disadvantage for using the composite material. In contrast, because of aluminum bend and then easily, it is quite easy to detect structural damage. Additional repairs can be more difficult when a composite surface is damaged, which ultimately become costly. For the problem statement in this project, it is generally reported that mechanical properties of composite materials are influenced by material aging, which is often accompanied by moisture absorption. This can cause the lamination and invisible harm. For example, when any object unluckily drop on the composite material, it does not cause visible damage but can change the performance of the composite material. The second one is composite material is readily exposed to the damp environment. The absorption of water in the composite will have an effect on the mechanical properties of the composite and will also reduce the performance of the composite. The third one is the composite will be soaked into distilled water with different period of time, and will be evaluate the amount of liquid absorption. The amount of the absorption will be determine the effect of the energy performance of the composite. We need to know the performance, the energy performance for the composite, that will be high or low in performance. There are three objectives that will be carried out in doing this project. The first objective is to fabricate composite with moisturized content subject to 1 day, 7 days, and 40 days of submerge. The second one is to determine the shear strength of glass composite by using interlaminar shear strength, which is ILSS test. And the third one is to determine the flexural strength of the Epoxy composite, which is use a flexural test. For the work scope, the first thing that I do is literature review, which means that I will talk detail more about interlaminar shear strength, which is ILSS test, and flexural test. The second one is to fabricate the epoxy composite. How we fabricate the epoxy composite using the epoxy hardener and fiberglass. And the third one, we test the epoxy composite by using the ILSS test and flexural test. In this literature review, there are 5 things that I'll be present to you, which is composite material, epoxy, influence of moisture content on composite, interlaminar shear stress, and flexural properties. For the first one is composite material. What is composite material? The formation of two or more part material with significantly different physical or chemical properties when combined produce a material with different characteristics compared to the basic element. Composite materials are widely used for bridge, houses, and structures such as ship hulls, rear car frames, toilet, storage tank, marble sinks, and countertops. The greatest disadvantage of composite material for manufacturers of components and aircraft is their higher initial cost compared to metals. The higher cost is mainly due to the quality of the fiber and the complex process needed to produce the finished materials. The third one is good material with lightweight, high strength to weight ratio, and stiffness properties. The second one is an epoxy. What is an epoxy? Epoxy is the main material for coating, adhesive, corrosion protectors, and electronic encapsulation. Epoxy-based coating in automotive application prevent rust and corrosion on vehicles and metal components. The use of filler in composite has been commonly used as certain forms of fillers improve composite properties. Compared to inorganic fillers such as black carbon and titanium dioxide, natural fillers have the advantage of lower weight and lower price. Composite materials are exposed to moist and wet environments. It is important to study the effect of moisture on composite material. Moisture absorption test is a suitable test to investigate the effect of the moisture on the composite. In this project, the specimen was submerged into distilled water with a room temperature for 1 day, 7 days, and 14 days. The effect of the composite with different moisture content can characterize the interlaminar fracture toughness as the ratio and moisture content level. The aspect that can be known is that the same type of composite will have a different effect on moisture absorption. What is interlaminar shear stress for? It is to determine the interlaminar shear strength between two laminates in composite. The interlaminar shear stress play an important role in the failure strength of composite laminate. The interface can be shear apart in the corresponding direction. When the transverse shear load experienced by the opposite composite exceeds the laminar shear strength, a delamination failure occurs between the layers of the reinforcement fibers. In order to measure ILSS of the composite directly, a pattern of pure shear stress should be generated between the laminate to induce interlaminar shear failure. These are the formula that can we find ILSS of the material. What is flexural properties? Flexural tests are generally used to determine the flexural modulus or flexural strength of a material. A flexural test is more affordable than a tensile test, and test results are slightly different. The material is laid horizontally over 2 points of contact, and then a force is applied to the top of the material. If a failure involves compressive stress, microbuckling, or shear splitting, the failure stress is lower. The most common aim of the flexure test is to assess flexural strength and flexural modulus. Flexural modulus is determined from the stress slope versus the strain deflection curve. These two values can be used to test the ability of the sample material to withstand the flexure or bending force. These are the flexural strength and flexural modulus formula. These are the methodology that I used to do while doing this project. The first thing that I do is a literature review. I will find and research about the whole project, what is project about, what that I need to do, what that I need to have. The second one is I can edit from the literature review. I can identify the objective, problem statement, and scope of the project. After I know the problem statement and the objective of the project, then I can prepare the specimen that I need to do. After I finish my specimen preparation, then I can test the specimen using the ILSS test and flexural test. After I do the test, then I can collect the data and I can do some analysis for this project. For the specimen preparation, the first thing that I do is making a mold with measurement of 180 mm length times 140 mm width and 4 mm thickness. After I'm making a mold, I mix an epoxy and hardener with a scale of 3 epoxy and 1 hardener in a mass of 90 gram of epoxy and 30 gram of hardener. After I mix them and stir it well to ensure there is no bubble in my mixture, and then I pour them into my mold and I put the fiberglass with the mixed opposite that I do before. I mix them and I put the 6 layer of fiberglass in the mold. Next, I put OHP paper on the top of my mixture to ensure that I can compress it until it became 4 mm of thickness in specimen. After I put OHP paper, why I put OHP paper? It is because OHP paper is one of the material that will not stick to the epoxy composite when it dry. After I put the OHP paper, I will dry the specimen for 1 day to ensure that the specimen is totally dry. After 1 day I dry the specimen, I take out the dry specimen from my mold as the as the picture shown. For the specimen testing, I have used two tests, which is flexural test and ILSS test. For the flexural test, I will cut the specimen that I have made using my previous mold in the size of 12.7 mm 8 times 80 mm times 4 mm. The support span length is 60 mm and the loading span size is 10 mm and the speed rate that I use is 1 mm per minute. For the ILSS test, the specimen size is slightly different from flexural test, which is 12.7 mm times 40 mm times 4 mm. The support span length 35 mm is quite shorter than flexural test, and the loading span it is same as a flexural test, which is 10 mm, and also the speed are also the same as the Fletcher test, which is 1 mm per minute. 4 specimens were prepared for testing using Fletcher machine. The specimens that was tested are from submerged in distilled water within 0 day, 1 day, 7 days, and 14 days. This test was conducted to know the capability and strength of each specimen and aware which one has a good product when submerged in certain time. The table shows the maximum Fletcher stress, maximum Fletcher strain, and maximum Fletcher modulus of epoxy composite. We can see that the Fletcher stress and strain of the 0 days is higher due to the performance of the composite. The graph shows all the curves displaying identical patterns, which when the load is increased, the material could not be sustained, and eventually the material couldn't be broken. We can see that the graph is in linear in the first state. It is because stress of the composite increased when putting some load, and the graph is slightly decreased when the composite is cracked a bit. Fletcher modulus measure the resistance to deformation of the material when external forces are applied, where stiffer materials show higher value of Young modulus. Fletcher modulus was determined by taking initial slope of the stress-strain curve in the elastic region. It was found that the slope of the strain-stress curve increasingly with no water in the opposite composite, which means 0 day of submerge. From the data obtained, epoxy composite that have been submerged within 14 days has the highest of the Fletcher modulus, which is 10.78 GPa, and the lowest Fletcher modulus is when submerged in 1 day of submerge, which is 7.36 GPa. From this test, it is relevant. It can be accepted that 1 day of submerge is the lowest Fletcher modulus because it has the lower absorption of distilled water compared to 7 days and 14 days. Is to investigate the shear strength of the epoxy composite. This table shows ILSS properties tests for the system. Generally, the material could not sustain and will break after the load exceeds for the limitation of deformation of itself. We can see that the specimen that have 0 day in submerged into distilled water has maximum load value of 774.56 kilonewton. It shows that the specimen in 0 days is higher in strength than specimen in 14 days of submerged. The graph shows load versus deflection of ILSS test for the specimen that have differently day in submerged into distilled water. Specimen 1 had high slope of load because no water absorption in specimen, while specimen 4 has been submerged into distilled water for 14 days, which is the longest time period in submerged. It is shown that the specimen 4 has low in graph when compared to another specimen. In this case, the specimen with a large amount of water absorption will reduce strength of the specimen. By referring this, specimen 1 has better properties and produce the higher ILSS properties. Thus, specimen 4 has low in properties and produce lower ILSS properties. High absorption of water is a major disadvantage of epoxy composite. It is because the presence of water molecule has an effect on the properties of the composites. From the result, it clearly can be seen that specimen 1 that not been submerged into distilled water will have high in ILSS value, which is 12.63 megapascal, while specimen 4 is the longest time period to submerge in distilled water, in 14 days and have the lowest ILSS value among the specimens, which is 5.45 megapascal. In this project, we can conclude that this project was successfully achieved. It's because we have successfully fabricated and test using mechanical test, which is ILSS, and flexural test. Second one is the composite properties can be affected by the mechanical behavior, which is we can know that the composite material will be affected by the water submerged. The third one is epoxy composite that not submerged in water have high in performance, which we can see that in this project the all days in submerged, the 0 days of submerged is have a high in performance than others. It is high potential in energy industry when using this experiment. In my experience in making this specimen, it is important to know the material scale of the epoxy and time taken to ensure the composite is totally high in strength in order to achieve the quality of the composite. This is the reason why I really detail in this study. It is to ensure that we obtain the better result for industries where we found a quality material and the proper way on how to make a specimen. So if you have any question, you can just call me or WhatsApp me or at this number, or you can just email me at fauzantikiman70@gmail.com. And that's all. Thank you for me and stay safe. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.